Hello there everyone and welcome to a new playthrough. It's been a little while. This is Space Harrier 2, a rail shooter released as a launch title for the Sega Genesis, created by the legendary Yu Suzuki, who I have been reading up on while playing a little bit of this game in preparation for this. It's pretty important, more so for the developer making it more so than the game itself, but it is a pretty fun time after the last game we played, Super Thunder Blade, also of this genre, ended up being really bad. But let's get into it. The first thing we're going to do before we actually get into the game, we're going to ignore the command to press the start button and instead press one of the fire buttons to get into the options menu. There are a few things we're going to do here. The first we're going to do is we're going to change rapid fire on. We're going to turn it on. All that does, it means that if you just hold one of the two buttons down, you don't have to tap it over and over and over again for each individual projectile. Makes things a bit easier. The other thing we're going to do is we are going to go into difficulty and we are going to reduce it down to easy. Now, I have tested this out. The only thing that changes between these modes apparently is the interval between collecting new lives, the points interval between new lives. So it defaults on normal to 1.5 million points you have to collect before you get a new life. If you drop it down to easy, it's 1 million. If you up it to hard, it's 2 million. Projectiles, bosses, patterns, everything else is the same. So we're going to turn it down to easy just so we can get a few more lives. And once we have done that, we can finally press start and get into it. We play as the Space Harrier, who has been called into action to assist Fantasyland, which has been invaded by various enemies. From what I can gather, a lot of them from the first game. Now, this is a rail shooter, quite a bit like Super Thunder Blade, but I gotta be honest, it is significantly stronger in just about every way. It looks better, it sounds better, it plays better. It's honestly pretty fun. And I have gotten fairly far into it. I've done a lot of practice. Ignore that, embarrassing on my end, but trust me, we should be able to cope with the occasional loss of life pretty easily. So long as we're not stupid and we just pay attention, we follow some patterns. With these basic enemies, we should be fine. Now, these are the most basic enemies in the game. They really don't do anything that crazy. All they do is they occasionally fire off a projectile like so, but they're easy to avoid, easy to shoot down. This is the first mini-boss of the game. Sort of. The game kind of has mini-bosses, kind of doesn't. It's not like they're really given any kind of special flavor and they're not on every stage, but that's apparently one of the bosses from the first game. In a lot of ways, this is kind of just a remake of the first game for the Sega Genesis rather than a brand new Space Harrier title. But it is pretty impressive what they're able to do. Compared to what Super Thunder Blade managed, this is significantly smoother feeling. There's a couple of places where the older style of scrolling feels a little bit cheap. You get a couple of cheap shots in that you shouldn't have gotten, but for the most part it's pretty good.
Ready?
Those are barbarians. I've seen a couple of places call them cabbages. I think that's more just because of what they look like more so than anything in any manuals. Officially, they're called barbarians. Apparently, also an enemy from the first game, which we nearly ran into there, but it's fine. We're doing fine. Now, it is good to have the auto fire on. Significantly better than not having it on. The only problem is isn't the most consistent firing pattern. Like, you'll fire out 4 projectiles at a time before you have to theoretically shoot another salvo, or at least that's what the game says. The problem is that sometimes you'll fire out 4 projectiles and immediately fire off some more, and other times you'll fire off like 4 projectiles and then it'll be like a second delay before you fire any more off. It's a bit inconsistent. It has killed me a couple of times, but it's a lot better than not having it on. Now this boss is Paranoia, and we managed to beat the last guy pretty easily, so we didn't really need to employ this. But we're going to employ the usual suit 'em up, rail shooter pattern of just circling around them before they can do anything. At the end of it, they'll run up towards us and they'll pull a scary face, but we can beat them pretty easily. Next stage, Yees Land. As you can see, we get through them pretty quickly. We're aiming to get to the bonus stage for each episode. So, you know, we've gone this far. We're aiming for the bonus stage. And then we'll call it there for this episode and move on for the next one. At this point, a group of what are called Cybermen come from the side of it. I guess Doctor Who wasn't calling in copyright for Space Harrier 2, but there we are. Then we get a couple of frogs who I find to be particularly tricky enemies for some reason. I couldn't tell you why, but they really...
Get ready.
Find them really hard to deal with. Something about their pattern in that moment, at least, find them really tricky to dodge. We're losing a lot more lives than we did on my best attempt, but again, bonus stages you can get a lot of them, so we'll just have to be a bit more careful in the next stage. Now in this boss, I think his name's Blizzard, if I remember correctly. We don't want to go and circle around the entire arena. We only want to circle on like one side, and we want to try and be in the center of the screen with him. I've kind of gone out of sync, but we want to be in the center of the screen with him when he kind of drops down after firing his projectiles, because that's the only point in which he's vulnerable. As you can see, he'll change colors over time, and we're really out of sync here, but you get the drill. He can take a couple of hits damage, like a lot of these older rail shooter games. It's a bit arbitrary, in all honesty. Like, you'll just be shooting them and eventually they'll die, but you'll be like, what? Why was that eventually fatal? 0 Polis, kind of a pretty futuristic stage, in all honesty. You want to be on the ground for a fair bit of it, fighting these Neodoms, as they're called. I find that's the easiest place to hit them, and we're really messing this up. Oof. At this stage, you got these guys come up. You want to kind of... They'll come from all different directions and then fire off a shot and then continue in those corners. You just want to go to one of the upper corners and you'll be fine. As long as you dodge the projectile, it's pretty easy. These guys are called armors, and I find them really annoying. They're not too hard to deal with, in all honesty, if you know what you're doing, but they've gotten me plenty of times because they go right up to you, and if you're in the wrong place, that's that. You just want to be up above them when they finally cross around. This is the next boss. This is the final boss we'll be facing in this episode. A pretty tough one to do damageless. The bosses in this game, to be honest, are a lot easier than the stages that precede them, but sometimes you just kind of have to tank the hit.
Get ready.
Like, either you'll kill them before they can do that, and it'll all be good. You know, you'll get away with it, and other times you just don't, and you have to tank the hit. It's unfortunately what it is. And I'll be honest, I've really flunked this episode in terms of managing our lives. We'll have to do better in the next one to stand much of a chance. But we'll wrap up today by dealing with the bonus stage, which is our method of gaining a lot of lives in one go. We can generally get about 3 or 4 of them if we do well here. But effectively, what we need to do is we need to go around and destroy everything we see on screen, whether it's the armors, whether it's these barnacle things, to increase the number of... I don't really know what they're supposed to be on the top of the screen, but we want to increase the number of them on there, because they're ultimately consumed to give us some new lives. So we want to have as many up there as we can. I think they're pearls, maybe? I'm not quite sure. But as you can see, then it times it by 50,000, and it'll give us 3 lives. Well, that's as good as we can expect. Before we move on to Copper Hill, the next stage of the game, I find this one pretty tricky, so we might burn through a fair number of lives in the next episode getting through it. But anyway, there's 13 stages of the game. We've already got through the first 4 of them. Next time we'll get up to, I think, stage 9? Stage 8. Stage 8 or 9, plus the bonus stage, before we'll finish it off in the 3rd episode. So a pretty short game, but a fun one. Much better than Super Thunderblade was. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you tune in next time, but for now, adios and ciao.